I stood frozen at the podium, certificate in hand, as Petra sauntered into the conference room. Every eye tracked her movement. The boss's daughter, who'd spent more time posting office party photos than learning our product line. My moment of triumph evaporated as she approached, designer heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. "Excuse me, everyone," she announced, her voice cutting through the congratulatory murmurs. "There's been a slight adjustment to today's announcement." The room fell silent. 3 years of 2 a.m. product launches, saved accounts, and international conference calls had led to this moment. My promotion to Senior Development Manager. Now Petra was looking at me with the detached interest of someone studying an insect. After careful consideration, she continued, not bothering to look at the note card in her hand. "We've decided the senior development position requires additional experience. Corinne will be taking the assistant coordinator role instead." She smiled thinly. "Consider it a reality check." My certificate suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The room blurred as blood rushed to my face. Garrison, her father and our CEO, wasn't even present for this ambush. Thea, my closest colleague, reached for my arm, but I stepped away. I wouldn't break. Not here. The champagne and cake will still be served in the break room. Petra added, checking her watch. "I have calls with our European partners in 15 minutes, so unfortunately I'll miss the celebration." Our European partners. My European partners. The ones I'd spent 6 months cultivating relationships with for our biggest international launch yet. As people awkwardly filed out, their congratulations transformed to whispered sympathies. I felt something shift inside me. The floor beneath my sensible shoes seemed to tilt as a clarity I'd never experienced before washed over me. I didn't know it yet, but that moment of humiliation would be the catalyst for something Petra never anticipated. Because while she had her father's name, I had something far more valuable, and she had just made the mistake of taking everything I had nothing left to lose. If you're enjoying this story of workplace betrayal and what might happen next, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more real-life dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Comment below if you've ever had someone try to take credit for your hard work. I read every comment and would love to hear your experiences. My name is Corinne Ashcroft. Before that day, colleagues described me as methodical, dedicated, and perhaps too accommodating. I grew up in a small coastal town where my father ran the local hardware store, teaching me the value of knowing your inventory better than your competition. My mother, a high school mathematics teacher, instilled in me the importance of double-checking every calculation. Neither prepared me for corporate politics. I joined Garrison's company 3 years ago after completing my master's in international business development. The company was struggling to expand beyond domestic markets, and my thesis on penetrating reluctant international economies caught their attention. I wasn't the obvious choice. I lacked the pedigree of other candidates, but my research was solid, and I was hungry to prove myself. For my first project, I was assigned to analyze why our products weren't selling in Australia. After 3 weeks of research, I discovered our shipping partner was holding inventory in non-climate-controlled warehouses, causing product degradation before items even reached shelves. My solution saved the company $3.4 million in my first quarter. I continued to quietly solve problems nobody else could see. When our Asian market expansion stalled, I identified cultural customizations that revitalized sales. When tariffs threatened our Canadian distribution, I found a legal workaround that preserved our margins. Through it all, I remained in my mid-level position while watching less qualified people climb past me. People like Derek, who played golf with Garrison. People like Weston, who attended the same university as the board chairman. People like Petra, who spent her first year observing departments before landing a director title. I told myself merit would eventually win. I was naive. The morning before my promotion turned demotion, I had received an email from our largest potential European partner. "Your analysis of our market is the most comprehensive we've seen," their CEO wrote. "We look forward to tomorrow's presentation and finalizing our partnership." That partnership would be worth $42 million in first-year revenue alone. I had spent months identifying a legislative loophole that would give us significant tax advantages if we moved quickly, before pending regulations closed it. The information wasn't public knowledge, but my research with regulatory insiders had uncovered it. This was my masterpiece. And now, apparently, it was Petra's. After the demotion announcement, I walked directly to HR. Everett, the human resources director, welcomed me with practiced neutrality. His office smelled of coffee and printer toner. "Corinne, what can I do for you today?" he asked, despite surely knowing why I was there. "I'd like to understand the rationale behind my position change," I said, keeping my voice steady, particularly since it contradicts what Garrison told me yesterday. Everett shifted in his seat. Position adjustments happen for various reasons. "Everett," I interrupted, "we've known each other for 3 years. Let's not pretend this is normal procedure." He sighed, shoulders dropping. "Look, I understand your frustration, but her father owns the company. What do you expect us to do?" The fluorescent light above flickered, casting momentary shadows across his apologetic expression. "So merit means nothing here?" I asked. "Merit means something," he replied carefully, "but family means more." I left his office with my answer. In the elevator down to my floor, my phone buzzed with a message from Thea. "Petra just emailed everyone. She's taking over your European presentation tomorrow. Says she's handling it personally now." The elevator doors opened, but I couldn't move. The European presentation contained my research about the regulatory loophole, the key to our competitive advantage. If presented correctly, it would cement our position in 5 countries. If handled poorly, my phone buzzed again. "Thea, she's in your files right now, copying everything." Of course she was. Why steal half a victory when you could take it all? I returned to my desk, soon to be relocated to some distant corner, and found Petra sitting in my chair, scrolling through my computer. She didn't even look up. "I need your presentation notes for tomorrow," she said. "They're all in the shared folder," I replied. "Everything's there." This wasn't entirely true. My latest research, the critical updates about the regulatory timeline, was saved in my personal notes. I hadn't transferred them to the shared drive yet, planning to incorporate them during my final presentation review. "Perfect," Petra said, standing up. "I'll take it from here. You should start moving your things to the assistant coordinator desk." She finally looked at me, her expression almost curious. "You know, if you had networked more, this might not have happened. All work and no play makes for replaceable employees." As she walked away, my desk phone rang. It was Veronica, our contact at the European Regulatory Commission. "Corinne, I just confirmed that information you asked about. The vote is definitely happening next week, not next month like everyone thinks. If your company wants to utilize the existing framework, you'll need to file within 10 days. 10 days. Not the 6 months everyone in the industry believed we had. Thank you, Veronica. This is incredibly valuable. I'm only telling you because you've done your homework better than anyone else approaching our markets. Will I see you at tomorrow's presentation?" I paused, my hand tightening around the receiver. "I'll be there, but there's been a change in presenters." After hanging up, I sat motionless, considering my options. The correct thing would be to immediately update the shared folder with this critical information, to ensure the company had every advantage. But as I watched Petra showing off my presentation to admirers across the office, another path crystallized in my mind. I could just do nothing. The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. I had never deliberately withheld information before, but I wasn't being asked to present. I was being demoted. My work was being stolen. What did I owe them? That evening, I stayed late, packing my desk items while everyone else left. The office grew quiet except for the hum of air conditioning. In the corner conference room, I could see Petra still practicing my presentation. She was stumbling over the technical details, but her confidence never wavered. She truly believed that confidence alone could substitute for competence. As I watched her, my phone rang. It was Garrison himself. "Corinne," he said without preamble, "I just heard about today's announcement. I want you to know I was in board meetings all day." "Are you saying you didn't approve the change?" I asked, heart suddenly racing. A long pause followed. "I'm saying Petra has strong instincts about organizational needs. The board feels she's ready for more responsibility. And my work, my projects, will be appropriately managed," he finished smoothly. "This isn't a reflection on your performance. Sometimes we need to make room for emerging talent. Emerging talent. His daughter was 31, 4 years older than me. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Excellent. I knew you would. That's why we value you. Just not enough to honor promises. Not enough to protect my career. As I hung up, Petra emerged from the conference room. Seeing me still there, she approached. Still working? That's dedication, she said with artificial brightness. Quick question about slide 32, the regulatory timeline. It mentions pending legislation but doesn't give specifics. Is there a supplemental document? This was my moment. The information from Veronica changed everything about our market entry strategy. Without it, any presentation would be fundamentally flawed. I looked at Petra, really looked at her. Behind her confidence, I saw anxiety. She knew she was presenting work she didn't understand, but she also believed her name would protect her from consequences. Everything important is in the main deck, I said. The legislation isn't expected to impact near-term plans. The lie tasted strange on my tongue, not bitter as I might have expected, but almost sweet. Perfect, she said, visibly relieved. That's what I thought. She turned to leave, then stopped. You should really be grateful. Assistant coordinator is more your speed. The senior role requires someone who can see the big picture, not just crunch numbers. After she left, I sat alone in the darkening office. Tomorrow, Petra would present my work to our European partners, our executive team, and the investment committee. She would present outdated regulatory information. She would miss the urgency of our market entry timeline. She would, with absolute confidence, lead the company toward a massive strategic error, and I would watch it happen. The next morning, I arrived early and chose a seat in the back of the main conference room. Executives began filing in at 8:45. Our European partners arrived at 8:55, led by Henrik, their silver-haired CEO. The investment committee, H1, 5 serious individuals with the power to approve or deny the $42 million expansion, took their seats at 9 precisely. At 9:10, Petra entered, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She distributed handouts, my handouts, created 3 weeks ago. Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice steady. I'm Petra Garrison, Strategic Initiatives Director, and I'm excited to present our European market entry strategy. For the next hour, I watched her deliver my work as her own. She handled the basic material well enough, the market size analysis, the competitive landscape, our product differentiation. The audience seemed engaged, nodding at appropriate moments. Then came the questions. These projections assume current regulatory conditions, said Elise from the investment committee. What contingencies do we have if regulations change? Petra smiled confidently. Our analysis indicates regulatory stability in this sector. The European Parliament isn't considering relevant changes for at least 6 months, giving us ample implementation time. Henrik frowned, exchanging glances with his legal counsel. Are you certain? We've heard rumors of accelerated timelines. Just rumors, Petra assured him. Our sources are quite reliable. My stomach tightened. Veronica wasn't a rumor. She was the assistant director of the Regulatory Commission. The questions grew more technical. With each one, Petra's answers became vaguer, her confident smile more forced. When asked about tariff implications for specific product components, she gave an answer so incorrect I had to stifle a gasp. Then Henrik asked the question I'd been dreading and anticipating. What's your position on next week's parliamentary vote regarding cross-border digital commerce regulations? Petra blinked rapidly. Next week? Our intelligence suggests that vote is scheduled for next quarter. It was moved up, Henrik said flatly. It's on the official parliamentary calendar. The outcome will fundamentally reshape market entry requirements. Petra faltered for the first time. We believe it won't significantly impact our projections. The room went silent. Henrik leaned back, no longer taking notes. The investment committee members exchanged concerned glances. Garrison, sitting at the head of the table, frowned deeply. Perhaps, Henrik said carefully, we should reconvene after your team has had time to assess the updated regulatory timeline. The meeting ended with uncomfortable handshakes and non-committal pleasantries. As everyone filed out, Garrison pulled Petra aside, his expression thunderous. Neither looked in my direction. I returned to my new desk in the corner, smaller, facing a wall, a physical manifestation of my demotion. By lunchtime, whispers spread that the European partners were reconsidering. By mid-afternoon, the investment committee had postponed their decision. At the 30, Garrison burst from his office, face flushed, phone clutched in his hand. Petra followed, her earlier confidence replaced by panic. My phone began to buzz. First Thea, then Everett from HR, then the head of legal. By the time I checked my notifications 4 hours later, I had 96 missed calls and messages. The company was in crisis mode. The European partners had not only delayed but were reconsidering whether we were competent enough to work with. The investment committee was questioning the entire expansion strategy, and everyone was looking for answers about how we could have missed something so fundamental. No one had yet realized that I might have those answers, but they would, soon, and when they did, everything would change. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone continued buzzing with messages I refused to answer. Around midnight, I finally silenced it and stared at my ceiling, thoughts racing. The company was in full meltdown, and I was the only one who knew exactly why. Morning arrived with a company-wide email announcing an emergency board meeting at 9 a.m. My name wasn't on the attendee list. No surprise there. Assistant coordinators didn't attend board meetings. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a simple charcoal dress I'd worn on my first day at the company. As I applied my lipstick, my phone rang. Thea. Corinne, where are you? Everyone's looking for you. Garrison is having a complete breakdown, and Petra locked herself in the bathroom an hour ago. I'll be in shortly, I replied calmly. They've called an emergency board meeting. Henrik and the European team are threatening to walk completely. Did you know about the vote next week? I paused, lipstick midair. Yes, I did. Silence stretched between us. Corinne, Thea's voice dropped to a whisper. Did you deliberately not tell Petra? I set down my lipstick. I'm on my way. We'll talk when I get there. The office was chaos when I arrived. People hurried between conference rooms, expressions tense. Everett from HR spotted me immediately. Thank God, he said, rushing over. The board wants to see you. Now. He led me to the executive floor, a place I'd visited rarely, and never with positive outcomes. Outside the boardroom, Garrison paced, while 2 board members spoke in hushed tones. Petra was nowhere to be seen. When Garrison noticed me, he stopped pacing. His face, normally confident and commanding, looked haggard. Corinne, he said, my name sounding strange in his mouth. We need to talk about the European presentation. Before I could respond, the boardroom door opened. Avery, the board chairman, gestured me inside. Ms. Ashcroft, please join us. The long boardroom table was filled with grave faces. Henrik and 2 members of his team sat on one side. The investment committee occupied the other. At the head sat Avery, his silver hair perfectly arranged despite the crisis atmosphere. Ms. Ashcroft, Avery began as I took the single empty chair. We understand you were originally assigned to the European market expansion project. That's correct, I replied, and you were removed from the project yesterday, immediately following your position adjustment. I nodded. Yet you attended yesterday's presentation. Why? All eyes turned to me. I could feel Garrison's gaze burning into my back from where he stood by the door. I wanted to support the company's interests, I said carefully. I've invested significant time in this project and care about its success. Henrik leaned forward. Ms. Ashcroft, were you aware of next week's parliamentary vote on cross-border commerce regulations? The room held its breath. This was the moment that would define everything that followed. Yes, I answered simply. I received confirmation of the accelerated timeline the day before yesterday. The room erupted with voices. Avery raised his hand for silence. And why wasn't this information included in yesterday's presentation? He asked. I met his gaze directly. I was removed from the project before I could update the shared files. My notes about the regulatory changes were in my personal research documents. Personal research? Garrison interrupted from behind me. All company work should be on the shared drive. I turned slightly to face him. The verification came through shortly before my demotion. I hadn't yet transferred my notes. I paused. And afterward, no one asked me for any updates. The silence that followed was deafening. Do you have this information with you now? Henrik asked. I reached into my bag and removed a folder. I do, along with a complete analysis of how we can still enter the market before the new regulations, if we move very quickly. For the next 2 hours, I walked the room through everything I knew. The specific regulations changing, the timeline for implementation, the narrow window we had to establish market presence under the existing framework, the exact steps required to meet the deadline. Henrik's team took extensive notes. The investment committee members exchanged meaningful glances. Avery watched me with growing interest. When I finished, Avery spoke first. It seems we have a significant opportunity, if we can move fast enough. We can, I said confidently, but decisions would need to be made immediately. And who would lead this accelerated timeline? Henrik asked. Before Avery could respond, Garrison stepped forward. Naturally, Petra would. Ms. Ashcroft, Avery interrupted. Would you be capable of leading this initiative? The question hung in the air. Through the glass walls, I could see Petra had finally emerged, watching the meeting from a distance, her expression unreadable. Yes, I said. I would. Avery nodded. The board needs to discuss next steps privately. Ms. Ashcroft, please wait outside. In the hallway, Garrison cornered me immediately. What game are you playing? He hissed, keeping his voice low enough that others couldn't hear. No game, I replied calmly. Just sharing what I know. You deliberately withheld critical information. I was demoted and removed from the project, I said. Nobody asked me if I had updates. His face reddened. You should have volunteered it. Like Petra volunteered to take my promotion? I asked quietly. Before he could respond, Petra approached. Her designer outfit from yesterday replaced by something more subdued. Her eyes were rimmed with red. They're going to blame me for everything, she said to her father, ignoring my presence. The board is furious. No one's blaming anyone, Garrison said, though his tone lacked conviction. Petra finally acknowledged me with a glare. You set me up. I did no such thing, I replied. I simply didn't correct your mistakes. You knew the presentation was incomplete. So did you, I countered. But you presented it as definitive, anyway. Before she could respond, the boardroom door opened. Avery emerged, followed by Henrik and the others. We've reached several decisions, Avery announced to our small group in the hallway. First, we're proceeding with the European expansion on the accelerated timeline Ms. Ashcroft outlined. Henrik nodded in agreement, with the understanding that we must file all necessary documentation before next week's vote. Second, Avery continued, Ms. Ashcroft will lead the project as Senior Development Manager, effective immediately. Garrison started to object, but Avery held up his hand. This is not negotiable, Garrison. The board has decided. And what about my daughter? Garrison demanded. Avery's expression hardened slightly. Petra will transition to our facilities management team. Her people skills will be valuable there. Facilities management, overseeing office space and maintenance. The corporate equivalent of being sent to Siberia, Petra gasped. That's janitorial work. It's administrative, Avery corrected coldly. And perhaps educational. My father won't allow this, she said, her voice rising. He's the CEO, who serves at the pleasure of the board, Avery reminded her. A board currently questioning his judgment in personnel matters. The threat hung in the air. Garrison's face paled. Now, Avery continued, Ms. Ashcroft has work to do if we're going to meet these deadlines. I suggest we all support her efforts. Within an hour, I was moved back to my original desk and given access to all necessary resources. Thea was assigned as my project deputy. By lunchtime, we had a preliminary timeline drafted for the accelerated market entry. When I finally checked my personal email that evening, I found a message from Veronica at the European Regulatory Commission. Heard through the grapevine that your presentation had some excitement yesterday. If you're still leading the project, I'd be happy to provide any clarification needed before the vote. I smiled as I typed my response. Thank you, Veronica. I am indeed leading the project now, and I would appreciate your insights. The next week passed in a blur of activity. 14-hour days, constant calls with Henrik's team, meticulous preparation of regulatory filings. Through it all, Petra remained conspicuously absent, while Garrison kept his distance, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary. On Thursday, 2 days before the parliamentary vote, Henrik visited our offices to review final documentation. "I'm impressed," he said as we concluded our meeting. "Your team has accomplished in days what most companies couldn't do in months." "Thank you," I replied. "We're motivated to get this right." He studied me thoughtfully. "You know, when Petra gave that presentation, I nearly walked away completely. Her confidence, despite such obvious knowledge gaps, was alarming. She had limited time with the material," I offered diplomatically. Henrik smiled slightly. "You're being gracious. Unnecessary, but appreciated." He gathered his papers. "By the way, there's an opening in our executive team for someone who understands both markets. Once this partnership is established, I'd be interested in discussing possibilities with you." The offer caught me off guard. I'm committed to seeing this project succeed. Of course. Just something to consider for the future. After he left, I sat at my desk, turning his words over in my mind. A week ago, I'd been demoted to a position with no future. Now I was fielding executive offers from international partners, all because I had chosen not to speak up. The thought was still with me that evening as I worked late, finalizing documents. Most of the office had emptied when I heard footsteps approaching. Petra stood before my desk, looking nothing like the confident woman who had demoted me. Her designer clothes had been replaced by business casual, her makeup subdued. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat, hands folded tightly in her lap. "I've been assigned to the Belgrade office," she said without preamble. "Facilities management for our Eastern European archive facility." Belgrade, the company's most remote location, housing decades of paper records nobody ever accessed. "I see," I said, unsure how to respond. "My father can't protect me anymore. The board has him on probation too." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "You won." The statement surprised me. This wasn't about winning. "Wasn't it?" she challenged. "You could have told me about the regulatory vote. You chose not to." I considered denying it, then decided on honesty. "Yes, I chose not to." "Why?" "Because you took something you didn't earn," I said simply, "and you needed to understand the consequences." She was quiet for a moment. "I've never failed at anything before." "That's the problem," I replied. "Failure is how we learn." "And what am I supposed to learn from being exiled to Belgrade?" I leaned forward slightly. "That name's open doors, but knowledge keeps them open." She nodded slowly, then stood to leave. At the door, she paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the demotion. It wasn't personal. It felt personal." "It wasn't," she insisted. "It was just convenient. I needed a senior role, and yours was available." As she walked away, I realized something important. To Petra, people like me were interchangeable, our careers mere stepping stones for her advancement. We weren't rivals in her mind. We were props. That understanding changed everything. The next morning, I received an email from Avery requesting a private meeting that afternoon. When I arrived at his office, I was surprised to find Henrik there as well. "Corinne," Avery began, "we want to discuss your future with the company." My stomach tightened. My future? Henrik has made a compelling case for creating a new position, International Partnerships Director. We've agreed this role should be yours, with appropriate compensation and authority. Henrik smiled. "As I mentioned yesterday, your understanding of both markets is exceptional." "This is unexpected," I managed. "Is it?" Avery asked. "You single-handedly saved our most important partnership and prevented a potentially disastrous market entry mistake." "What about Garrison?" I asked carefully. "As CEO, wouldn't he need to approve this?" Avery and Henrik exchanged glances. "There have been additional developments," Avery said. "Garrison has decided to take an extended sabbatical, effective immediately. The board will be announcing an interim CEO later today." The news stunned me. "I see. Do you accept the position?" Henrik asked. "Yes," I said. "Of course." After they outlined the details, I returned to my desk in a daze. Thea rushed over immediately. Is it true? About Garrison? I nodded. How did you hear already? The board memo just went out company-wide. Rumor is he's not coming back. She lowered her voice. They say the European crisis was just the final straw. Apparently, the board has been concerned about his management decisions for months, especially around his daughter. As word spread throughout the office, I received a steady stream of congratulatory messages about my new role. By evening, my promotion was official. My name added to the executive leadership page on the company website. 1 week after Petra had demoted me, I had an office twice the size of hers, a team of 12 reporting to me, and direct access to the board of directors. I had won, but strangely, victory felt hollow. That night, as I packed up to leave, I found a small box on my desk with a note from Thea. For your new office, you earned this. Inside was a simple nameplate, Corinne Ashcroft, International Partnerships Director. I ran my fingers over the engraved letters, thinking about everything that had happened. I hadn't plotted elaborate revenge. I hadn't spread rumors or manufactured evidence. I had simply stepped aside and let Petra fail on her own merits. And in doing so, I had revealed something far more powerful than any scheme could have accomplished. The truth about her capabilities. The ultimate revenge wasn't taking her down. It was rising above while she fell under the weight of her own incompetence. 2 days later, we received confirmation that our European market entry had been approved before the regulatory changes. The partnership with Henrik's company was formalized. The $42 million expansion was proceeding. As I stood at the window of my new office, watching the sunset paint the city skyline, my phone buzzed with a text from an international number I didn't recognize. It's freezing in Belgrade. The archive facility is as exciting as it sounds. Congratulations on your promotion. I underestimated you. Won't happen again. P. I didn't reply. Some lessons are best learned in silence. 6 months later, our European expansion was exceeding all projections. Garrison's sabbatical had become permanent retirement. Petra remained in Belgrade, though rumors suggested she was looking for positions at other companies. And me? I was thriving in my new role, respected by the board and my team alike. The fear that had driven me to work twice as hard as everyone else had transformed into confidence that allowed me to work twice as smart. When Henrik visited for our quarterly review, he commented on the change. You seem different, Corinne, more assured. I learned something important, I told him. True power isn't in titles or family connections. It's in knowing your value and being willing to stand in it, even when others try to diminish you. He smiled. And in knowing when to speak up and when to remain silent. Especially that, I agreed. People often think revenge requires elaborate schemes or public humiliation, but I discovered its purest form, creating success so undeniable that those who wronged you must acknowledge it, even from their exile in Belgrade. The most devastating response to someone who tries to erase you isn't fighting back. It's becoming impossible to ignore. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real workplace dramas that will keep you coming back for more. Have you ever been underestimated and then proven someone wrong? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one and would love to hear how you handled it.